I wrote this video about how Trump keeps saying that he stopped 8 wars last year and how that's not really, true. And then this morning, Saturday, January 3rd, the morning I'm recording this video, I woke up to the news that our military has arrested the president of Venezuela. The whole president of peace thing seems even more ridiculous now, doesn't it? Anyway, here's the video I had mostly already written when I heard that my country had invaded another country and abducted its president. A couple of months ago, President Trump sat for an interview with Norah O'Donnell on 60 Minutes. Among many other things, he said this.
And in the meantime, I've solved 8 wars. I knocked out 8 wars. I have 8 wars. I brought a little list for you if you'd like to see it. But I took 8 wars and stopped during an 8-month period. During 8 months before the 9th month, I stopped 8 wars.
It was not the first time Trump had made this claim or that the claim had been made on his behalf. A few weeks before that interview, on October 14th, the U.S. State Department's official Twitter account posted this, an image of a slouching Trump lazily raising a fist with text declaring him the president of peace and listing the 8 wars he supposedly ended in the first 8 months of his second term. Given Trump's long and well-established history of self-serving lies and exaggerations, it goes without saying that it isn't true. He didn't really stop 8 wars in 2025. Of course he didn't. Calling him the president of peace is a demented fantasy with no basis in reality. Of course it is. But what are the facts? When Trump or one of his personal publicists at the Department of State says that he's ended 8 wars, what are they actually talking about? Is it entirely made up? Or is there some truth buried somewhere underneath the bullshit? The 8 wars Trump supposedly ended, according to the October 14th State Department tweet, were wars between Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, and Israel and Hamas. Cambodia and Thailand have been arguing over their shared border for decades. Over the summer, that argument broke into armed conflict, and not for the first time. There was a brief skirmish in late May, followed by a couple of months of tension amid attempts to de-escalate the situation. Then, in late July, hostilities erupted between the Thai and Cambodian militaries, Cambodia attacking Thai targets with rocket launchers, and the Thai Air Force bombing positions in Cambodia. The conflict lasted from July 24th to July 27th, with dozens of soldiers and civilians killed or injured and hundreds of thousands more civilians displaced on both sides. On July 28th, the two countries agreed to a ceasefire. What did Donald Trump have to do with it? Apparently something. On July 26, he posted on his off-brand social media site, Truth Social, that he was calling the Prime Minister of Cambodia and the Prime Minister of Thailand to request a ceasefire, mentioning that the U.S. was currently involved in trade negotiations with both countries and stating that there would be no deals made while the two countries are fighting. On July 27th, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that State Department officials were on hand to take part in the ceasefire negotiations. Later, on August 7th, Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet sent a letter to the Norwegian Nobel Committee nominating Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in the ceasefire negotiations. On October 26, a more comprehensive ceasefire agreement, the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accord, was signed by Manet and Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul, with Trump on hand as a witness. So regardless of whatever else happened or didn't happen with the other 7 wars, Trump at least deserves credit for ending this one, right? I mean, yes, in the sense that it seems like he did play an important role in achieving this ceasefire, but no in the sense that Cambodia and Thailand continued fighting, even after the ceasefire was signed. On November 10th, 2 weeks after the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accord was signed, 2 Thai soldiers were injured by a Cambodian landmine, and Thailand announced it was suspending the peace agreement. 2 days later, on November 12th, there was an incident that left 1 Cambodian civilian dead and several others injured. The Cambodian Defense Ministry accused the Thai army of opening fire on civilians. Fighting continued throughout December, with troops exchanging fire and the two nations trading attacks with rockets and bombs, each side blaming the other for shooting first and violating the ceasefire. The fighting in December killed over 100 people in total on both sides, mostly civilians. On December 28th, Trump posted another message on Truth Social announcing that the two countries had agreed to stop fighting again and resume abiding by the agreement they signed in October. So how do we count that one? Does Trump get half credit for ending a war that immediately flared up again, or does he get extra points for ending the same war twice? That first one is a little complicated, but the second one on the list, tweeted by the State Department, that's pretty cut and dry. Did Trump stop a war between Kosovo and Serbia in 2025? No, because there was no war between Kosovo and Serbia in 2025, and there wasn't going to be one. As with Cambodia and Thailand, relations between Kosovo and Serbia have been fraught for a long time. Kosovo was formerly a part of Serbia. Then in 2008, it declared independence. More than 100 nations around the world recognize the independence of Kosovo, including the United States, most of the European Union, most of NATO, and most of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, an intergovernmental organization that consists primarily of Muslim-majority countries. However, Serbia does not recognize the independence of Kosovo, hence the tension. Despite that tension, which was inflamed by the Declaration of Independence in 2008 but existed long before, there has been no recent armed conflict between the two states. One important reason for this has been the presence of the Kosovo Force, a team of more than 5,000 peacekeepers led by NATO. The Kosovo Force currently includes nearly 700 American troops and has been in Kosovo maintaining peace and security since 1999. It has frequently been something other than peaceful. Mass protests and civil unrest has resulted in the deaths of civilians and members of the Kosovo Force over the years, but it hasn't escalated to the point of war. So, and I'll be asking this question again before we're done, I'm sure, what the hell is Trump talking about? In October, the BBC published an article by Jake Horton and Nick Beek with the headline, "How many wars has President Trump ended?" In the article, several experts are quoted, including Oxford history professor Margaret Macmillan. Here's what that article has to say on the subject of Serbia and Kosovo. Quote, on 27 June, Trump claimed to have prevented an outbreak of hostilities between them, saying Serbia-Kosovo was going to go at it, going to be a big war. I said, you go at it, there's no trade with the United States. They said, well, maybe we won't go at it. The two countries have long been in dispute, a legacy of the Balkan Wars of the 1990s, with tensions rising in recent years. Serbia and Kosovo haven't been fighting or firing at each other, so it's not a war to end, Professor Macmillan told us. The White House pointed us towards Trump's diplomatic efforts in his first term. The two countries signed economic normalization agreements in the Oval Office with the president in 2020, but they were not at war at the time. So, is he taking credit for stopping a war between Serbia and Kosovo that never started? Even though he doesn't seem to have actually done anything involving Serbia and Kosovo since 2020? Also, it sounds like that economic normalization agreement they signed in the Oval Office back in 2020 might not have amounted to all that much. The Associated Press published its own fact-checking article about Trump's "I stopped 8 wars" claim just last week, and here's how its section on Serbia and Kosovo ends. Quote, during his first term, Trump negotiated a wide-ranging deal between the countries, but much of what was agreed on was never carried out. What about the war between the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the DRC, and Rwanda? In June, representatives of the DRC and Rwanda signed a peace deal at the State Department in Washington, D.C., with Trump's very own Secretary of State Marco Rubio on hand. Then, just last month, the leaders of the DRC and Rwanda signed another peace deal in Washington, D.C., with Trump right there. Oh, incidentally, the place where they signed the deal is on Constitution Avenue in D.C., not far from the Lincoln Memorial, and used to be called the United States Institute of Peace, until Trump gutted its funding, fired the board of directors and most of its employees, and renamed the building after himself. Still, though, two peace agreements between the DRC and Rwanda in 1 year, Trump's gotta deserve credit for this one, right? Sure, if the two sides had stopped fighting after signing those peace agreements, which, from the AP's fact check, quote, Eastern Congo, rich in minerals, this year saw the return of the M23 rebel group. It is backed by Rwanda, which claims it is protecting territorial interests, and that some of those who participated in the 1994 Rwandan genocide are working with the Congolese army. In June, the Congolese and Rwandan foreign ministers signed a peace deal at the White House, and in early December, the country's presidents signed a peace deal as Trump looked on. But the M23 has said it would not abide by an agreement that did not directly involve it. Days after the latest signing, the rebels seized another eastern Congo city before claiming to withdraw. There is also a separate Qatar-facilitated deal between Congo and M23, but the parties have accused each other of violating the ceasefire. There's also this little detail about what was signed last month at the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace, courtesy of NPR's Emmett Livingstone.
It's difficult to describe the enormity of Congo's mineral wealth. The country in the heart of Africa produces over 70% of the world's cobalt, and it's the second largest producer of copper. It also has tantalum, niobium, and lithium, minerals critical for both tech and defense. And the Trump administration is keen to capitalize.
We're going to take out some of the rare earth and take out some of the assets and pay, and everybody's going to make a lot of money.
That was President Trump on December 4th, on the expansive economic deal his administration had just signed with Congo. No major US company operates in Congo, deterred by instability and corruption. The economic deal aims to change that. Among its most significant provisions, US firms get first dibs on some Congolese mines up for sale, which could block new Chinese investment. The deal also lays out ways to guarantee stable supplies of critical minerals, including cobalt, to the US.
What do you think Trump is more interested in? The peace deal or the deal that's going to make a lot of money for his buddies in the rare earth mining business? How do you figure out percentage points on a peace deal? Come on. Also, if you read through that first peace agreement they signed and ignored in June, it mostly just reaffirms that they will abide by the terms of another peace deal they signed already in 2024. So even if that June agreement had stuck, it would be hard to make a case that Trump, the brilliant dealmaker, deserved much credit. Next, Pakistan and India. Like most of the other belligerents in this discussion, these two have been enemies for a very long time, and back in the spring, things escalated following a mass shooting event in Kashmir, the disputed territory that has been the main subject of tension between the two countries. A group of gunmen who were apparently targeting Hindus opened fire on a group of tourists, killing 26 and wounding 17 others. The government of India blamed Pakistan for the attack, calling it an act of terrorism, and launched a military campaign to find the militants responsible for the attack. The Indian and Pakistani military skirmished. India launched missiles at militant targets. Pakistan responded by launching mortar shells at the district of Poonch, killing 16 civilians and destroying hundreds of homes. Then, on May 10th, the two sides agreed on a ceasefire, and a lot of people breathed a sigh of relief because both India and Pakistan have nuclear arsenals. So if they ever do break into full-on war, things could get really bad really fast. Trump claimed credit for the ceasefire, but how much credit he actually deserves depends on who you believe. India insists that Trump and the United States had nothing to do with the ceasefire, and that it was the result of direct talks between the leaders of the Indian and Pakistani militaries. The Pakistani government, on the other hand, says that Trump played a crucial role in negotiating the ceasefire and announced it would nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts. Between this and Cambodia doing the same thing, do you think Trump pressured everybody he negotiated with last year to recommend him for a Nobel nomination? Like when you buy a car and the salesperson gets super pushy with you about giving them the highest possible ratings in the dealer survey? The difference is the car salesperson actually stands to suffer or benefit based on the survey, while Trump's obsession with the Nobel Prize is like everything else in his life over the last 15 years, a self-declared dick-measuring contest against Barack Obama. Israel and Iran. There was a 12-day war between these two that began on June 13th when the Israeli military struck Iranian targets. The motivation for the attacks, according to the government of Israel, was to stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. Iran says it wasn't developing a nuclear weapon, but the day before Israel attacked, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN's nuclear watchdog organization, reported that Iran had failed to comply with its obligations to the agency and was stockpiling enough uranium to make multiple nuclear weapons if enriched. Iran retaliated with missile attacks on Israel, including the use of cluster munitions that violated international law, though I don't suppose the current government of Israel has much standing to complain about that. The 12-day war ended after the United States joined the war on the side of Israel and bombed several more Iranian targets. After that, Trump announced a ceasefire. Only, like a few of the other ceasefires I've mentioned, it did not result in an actual ceasing of firing. Both sides continued attacking each other for several hours after the ceasefire supposedly went into effect, though they must have just needed to get it out of their systems, because later that day they did actually stop, and the ceasefire has held ever since, as of this recording. A couple of important points, though. First, this ceasefire is really nothing but a mutual agreement to suspend hostilities. There has been no long-term peace agreement. In fact, after the ceasefire began, both Trump and Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz threatened to attack Iran again if it resumed its nuclear program. Second, while this is the closest thing on that list of 8 wars to a legitimate example of Trump playing a key role in ending a war, note how the end to the war was achieved. Trump's whole President of Peace sales pitch is premised on what a brilliant deal maker he is. The statement released by the government of Pakistan nominating Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize says this intervention stands as a testament to his role as a genuine peacemaker and his commitment to conflict resolution through dialogue. But the only war Trump actually helped to end in 2025 that didn't immediately start back up again after the signing of his deal is the one that he didn't end by dialogue, diplomacy, and deal-making, but by taking a side and winning through brute force. President of Peace? Only because peace followed war in this case. And that peace is anything but stable. The next war on the State Department list is the war between Egypt and Ethiopia. Some of you who pride yourselves on keeping up with international affairs might be asking, what war between Egypt and Ethiopia? To which I reply, exactly. Like the non-existent war between Kosovo and Serbia that Trump stopped, the war between Egypt and Ethiopia that Trump stopped never actually started, nor was anyone seriously worried that it was going to start. Nor did Trump or his administration have anything to do with preventing it. Back in 2011, Ethiopia began construction of a dam on the Blue Nile to generate hydroelectric power. Egypt objected, saying that the dam would negatively impact the amount of water that flows from the Blue Nile into the Nile. The dam was inaugurated this past September. Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan, which also objects to the dam, have been negotiating for years to reach a water-sharing agreement, but those negotiations have ground to a halt. Egypt has accused Ethiopia of violating international law by presuming to impose unilateral control over what they see as a shared resource. There's the potential for this situation to get a lot worse if it's not resolved soon, but in 2025, there was no war between Ethiopia and Egypt, nor did Donald Trump do anything at all to resolve the conflict surrounding the dam that could theoretically lead to a war in the future. In fact, if the master negotiator had any effect on the talks surrounding the dam, it was negative. In July, Trump claimed that the dam had been built, quote, with United States money largely, a statement officials associated with the dam rejected. Trump has also characterized the dam as, quote, stupidly financed by the United States of America and said that it, quote, substantially reduces the water flowing into the Nile River, which is essentially the Egyptian position in the conflict. As a result, the United States is no longer viewed by the Ethiopians as a neutral party, and at the moment seems unlikely to have much influence on any negotiations going forward. The art of the deal. No, wait. The art of opening your big mouth and fucking up the deal. There, I fixed it. 2 more wars to go. First, Armenia versus Azerbaijan, another long-standing territorial dispute. The territory in question is a region called Nagorno-Karabakh, and Armenia and Azerbaijan have been fighting over control of it for decades. It was mostly home to ethnic Armenians until 2 years ago when Azerbaijan launched a military offensive and captured it, at which point the Armenians left en masse because Azerbaijan does not have a very good record when it comes to how it treats Armenians. And I mean, that's not remotely the whole story. I'm leaving a lot out. The point is, Nagorno-Karabakh has been a point of conflict for Armenia and Azerbaijan for a long time. And then, this past August, the Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, and the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, came to the White House and signed a peace deal with President Trump sitting between them that included an agreement to build a travel corridor across Armenian territory, linking Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan, which belongs to Azerbaijan but is located on the far side of Armenia. So, woohoo? War solved? Great job, Mr. President. Collect your Nobel Peace Prize over here to the right? No, of course not. By now, we should all know that when Donald Trump says, "I stopped a war," the last thing that actually means in reality is that Donald Trump stopped a war. First, yet again, this wasn't an active war. There was a history of war. There was definitely conflict, long-running tension, and there still is. Trump did nothing to resolve that conflict or that tension. They didn't even sign a peace deal. They initialed a peace deal, which is basically their way of saying, yeah, this looks good, but they haven't signed it. Neither nation has ratified it. Nothing is finished here yet. So naturally, Trump took the first opportunity to run in front of a camera and go, "I did it! I stopped the war!" One more thing, the most talked about provision of the peace deal they didn't sign, the travel corridor across Armenia linking Azerbaijan with its territory on the other side, it will be located in Armenian territory, but according to the agreement, it will be administered by the United States. And not by the United States government, no, by private companies from the United States. When construction of that travel corridor has been discussed over the years, it's been referred to as the Zangezur Corridor, because that's what that region of the country is called. There are mountains there called the Zangezur Mountains. Guess what Trump wants to call it? That's right. The Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity. Sounds so auspicious, so grand. It's going to be 27 miles long. I'm not saying it's not important for the region and for the potential of settling this conflict, but Route for International Peace and Prosperity might be a little much. Not that Trump cares. He's got to put his name on everything, and he's got to make it sound like the most impressive thing in the world. I'm surprised he hasn't tried to rename all the gas stations near the White House after himself. I'm surprised the nearby McDonald's he always orders from hasn't been forcibly rechristened the Donald Trump McDonald's Presidential Suite or something and had its interior wrapped in gold. None of this is about peace. He doesn't care about peace. He cares about profit. He doesn't care about stopping wars. He cares about stroking his own ego. Last but not least, Trump takes credit for stopping the war between Israel and Hamas. I'm sure everyone, particularly the people of Gaza, were thrilled to find out that war was over. Correction, the remaining people of Gaza. After decades of near constant conflict and 2 years of merciless genocidal assaults against the captive population of Gaza by Israel in grossly out of proportion retaliation for the horrible October 7, 2023 attacks on Israel by Hamas, the two sides agreed on a peace plan that went into effect on October 10, 2025. It was Trump who proposed the plan and announced it, and apparently convinced Hamas to go along with it by threatening them with, quote, complete obliteration if they didn't. So, done deal, peace in the Middle East, yay! Except no, of course that's not the situation at all. The October 10th ceasefire is merely the latest in a long line of ceasefires that have been agreed upon only to fall apart and for fighting to resume. And in this case, when I say fighting, I mostly mean the Israeli military bombing civilians. Though every once in a while, someone from Hamas will shoot at some Israeli soldiers, just to keep things balanced. Not only does history tell us to expect that, unfortunately, the breaking of the October 10th ceasefire is a foregone conclusion, the ceasefire has already been broken a bunch of times. In fact, within 3 days of the deal going into effect, both sides were accusing each other of violating the agreement. Israel blamed Hamas for failing to turn over the remains of all its dead Israeli hostages, and Hamas blamed Israel for continuing to attack and kill Palestinians. Since this subject is what it is, I should probably pause here to make it clear, as I do pretty much every time I talk about this, that I'm not a fan of Hamas, and I don't think there was anything good about what happened to the people of Israel on October 7th, 2023. It was an atrocity, and there's no excuse for it. But the atrocities of October 7th, 2023 are also no excuse for the far, far, far greater atrocities the state of Israel has committed since. And not committed against Hamas, but against the captive civilian population of Gaza. At least 70,000 dead, perhaps many more, mostly civilians, mostly women and children, and that's not counting the many more thousands who have died in the famine that resulted from the state of Israel's attacks. Hospitals, schools, entire towns, basic infrastructure, all destroyed. Nearly 2 million people forcibly displaced, some multiple times. Inexcusable, unforgivable. Hamas also accuses Israel of violating the peace agreement by continuing to choke off humanitarian aid from entering Gaza, and the Health Ministry of Gaza, which is run by Hamas, claims that since the ceasefire went into effect on October 10th, Israeli troops have killed over 400 Palestinians. That's some peace deal you got there. Admittedly, 400 killings in 3 months is a major de-escalation, but only because the Israeli government's previous rate of destruction and mass murder in Gaza was so horrifyingly high. So, Trump gets credit for that, I guess. On paper, the peace deal enacted on October 10th isn't bad. It calls for an immediate end of hostilities, the return of prisoners, living and dead, to both sides, the dismantling of Hamas to be replaced by a new government created by the Palestinians with international support, and the acknowledgement of the possibility of a Palestinian state in the future. Not the same thing as recognizing Palestine as a state, but a step in the right direction. That's all on paper, though. In reality, so far, what we've seen is hardly worth bragging about. Trump boasts of stopping the Israel-Hamas war and bringing peace to this war-torn region, but what he actually did was bully the weaker side into giving up by threatening to join the stronger side and help them kill anyone who's left. And since then, he's looked the other way, while that stronger side has continued to punish the weaker side whenever it sees fit. Gee, how'd those jerks on the Nobel Committee justify not giving him that peace prize? I just don't get it. One last thing, let's not forget that while Trump and his bootlickers in the administration have been promoting him as the president of peace since September, he's also been having the U.S. military blow up boats in the Caribbean, claiming, without publicly released evidence so far, that the people operating the boats are Venezuelan drug smugglers, as if that justifies summarily executing them. In December, Trump also ordered the seizure of 2 Venezuelan oil tankers, which he claimed were carrying oil being used to fund drug trafficking. And on December 30th, he ordered the bombing of a dock in Venezuela, which he claimed was being used to load drug boats. Again, no evidence establishing the truth of these claims has been made public, and Trump himself has been pretty open about the fact that he wants to assert U.S. control over Venezuelan oil. Then, just a couple of days ago as you're watching this, and just a few hours ago as I'm recording this, Trump announced that the U.S. had carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and captured the president of Venezuela and his wife and flown them out of the country. So there's your president of peace. Claims to have stopped 8 wars in a year, has actually stopped 0 wars, and spent the last quarter of the year ordering extrajudicial executions of alleged criminals and bombing a sovereign country and capturing its ships in an effort to take away its natural resources, and started the new year by bombing the capital of that sovereign country and abducting its head of state. Trump wants us to believe that he's some next-level genius, a visionary whose very good brain can think up solutions nobody else can, and a skilled negotiator who can bring two enemies to a table hating each other and have them leave smiling and shaking hands, and none of that is true. Most of the wars he claims to have ended weren't actually happening. The deals he got people to sign were either immediately broken or didn't mean much of anything to begin with, and the only tangible differences he made in actual conflicts were achieved not by diplomacy, but by threats and brute force. He's not a diplomat, he's a dipshit. He's not a leader, he's a liar. He's not a thinker, he's a thug. Has he claimed credit for ending the war with Venezuela yet? No? Give him time.